Story 1. The son confessed that he was a murderer. My son told me he is a serial killer. I believe him. People look at me strangely when I say that my son is 18 years old. I am 33. When James and I go out somewhere, people often ask if he is younger than him brother. These 18 years have not passed without difficulties, but I like to think that I did everything I could, given the circumstances. When I was in high school at school, my girlfriend got pregnant. The parents were going to give the child to adoption, but my mother intervened and helped me get custody. My son he's an excellent student. He plays the position point guard in school basketball team. I have saved up enough money to buy him a more or less decent car. He is popular at school. Unlike from me, when I was his age, I already had a 2-year-old son, a high school diploma after finishing school and working in the local Pella factory. We live in a 2-room duplex apartment a couple of blocks away his school. He does his homework himself without special reminders and spends free time with friends or in the living room, spreading me in Call of Duty. At some point I thought he might be into boys. I didn't care, but it seemed strange that a guy his age, I've never dated a girl. I asked him about it, and he, smiling, replied, "No, Dad, I just want wait a little before starting relationship. I don't want you to become grandfather in his 30s. That's it." Our conversation about pistols and stamens. With the internet and lessons sex education in school, which I signed the permission, I decided that he knows the basics. A couple of months ago he said he would stay late. When I asked why, he answered that he had date. I didn't ask any unnecessary questions. I shoved $100 into his hand and said to come back for breakfast. He was a good guy. I trusted him. Then this began to happen from time to time. On Friday afternoons, he warned that it will be late in the evening. Every Saturday in the morning, I found him at home sitting on the couch and playing Xbox. I never met his girls, but thought that he just doesn't want to introduce me to them. As I said, I trusted my son. I had a clear head and I didn't have reasons to suspect something is wrong. I don't usually watch the news. I'm scrolling through my social media feed and I don't like this enough. But for some reason I found myself in front of the TV at 5 p.m. and decided to turn on the news. I regret that did it. The ad ended and changed to a shot of the presenter sitting with a gloomy expression on her face. She looked into the camera and said, "Several women and there are still missing persons in the area missing. Police are looking for clues to understand whether these disappearances are connected among ourselves." We lived in a quiet little town. The idea that something like this could happening so close to home slightly shocked me. The thought that my son can be outside at such a time scared him even more. I talked to him about this. He told me not to worry. James was a big guy, almost 2 meters tall, and a broad figure. I wasn't afraid that someone will be able to attack him, but being a big guy myself, I knew that dimensions mean little if someone I have a gun. James assured me that there's nothing to worry about, but just in case I happened to steal his phone while he was sleeping. I installed an app that allowed me to see him at any time location. Maybe I just paranoid. But I remembered myself at 17 and even then the feeling that I am invulnerable. I did not become long. Think about it. Having set up the application in stealth mode, I returned the phone to charging in the kitchen. I thought that if I'll be worried someday while he's at it, it's wandering around somewhere, I'll just open the app on my phone and I'll check where he is. If everything is within reason, I'll calm down and go back to watching Netflix. I started following the missing persons case. Women on the internet. In our area, it has gradually become real media sensation. 6 women have disappeared in 10 weeks. They were of different ages and appearances. Still haven't found it. But the police were going from what may have taken place murders. When the 7th woman disappeared, my heart sank. I hadn't seen Rochelle for 10 years. She appeared in my life again. When James was about 7, tried to play the role of mother, but it didn't work. After several months of empty communications and missed, I filed a petition with the court for meetings, conducting a substance test. After how she failed it, my lawyer filed another petition, depriving her any rights to visit our son. I didn't want him to have to go through this pass. It was Saturday morning and I was with a big. I was reluctant to go down. James rarely spoke about his mother. After his birth, I went downhill and started using any kind of drugs, substances that could be exchanged her body. By the time she decided to visit him, she had aged for years by 20. In just 7 years, his hands were covered with injection marks and teeth turned black to the point of rot. Frankly, I'm surprised she even lived like this for a long time. With a heavy heart, I approached to his son in the living room and said, "Son, we need to talk about your mother." James sighed and paused the game, looked up at me and asked, "What is she? Did you do this again?" I sighed and said, "She went missing last night. Police says there were signs in her trailer fight." James stared at the TV, as if through it, and took the game off pause. Continuing to look straight ahead, he said, "But this is not news truth. We didn't talk about his mother because he didn't like it. One of the reasons why I got a lawyer involved was that during one of after visiting, she took him to her place. It seems, while he was sitting on the sofa, several clients came into her. The first real visit to the drug addict's mother sat next to him and paid $20 to have fun with him mother. 3 hours later, some guy, whom James called Stephen, took his home. He was sitting outside when I came back from work and asked what happened, and all he said was that mother doesn't want him to go to her. He sat outside without a jacket for 4 hours. So much could happen to him, happened to my mother, so I was glad that everything turned out so small incident. I heard horrific stories of similar cases that ended much more terrifyingly consequences. After that, I immediately signed James up for an appointment with a therapist. After for several years the condition returned to normal, and visits to the psychologist became less and less frequent. Until that night, he asked about my mother about once every couple of days, months. Since this happened, I think he mentioned her only once. The following week, he said that again goes on a date. The anxiety that night resulted in me opened the app on his phone. He went to a random address on the end of the city, and then into some wilderness. I installed this app several times weeks ago and didn't think much about it. However, I didn't know it all this time saved all his movements. Judging by records, over the next 6 weeks, I've been to that wilderness at least 4 times. I looked through his stops and routes and noticed that on the night when Rochelle was missing, he was at her trailer. I felt uneasy, but I refused to believe in something that would be right away for me, obviously, if it weren't about me son. I threw the phone on the bed and took a bottle of whiskey out of the nightstand. I sang until I passed out and woke up on the next morning. I was broken. James was down below, playing Dark Souls. I uploaded it. He poured himself a can of Red Bull and staggered out to car. I decided to go to Tuglush and check where my son takes girls date. How I regret that I went. I'm so sorry. The GPS led me to gravel road, which has long since come into decline. After driving along it for about 200 meters on the other side, there was a dense forest. I drove out onto a clearing with a small pond, stopped, and I got out of the car. I noticed by the pond the remains of a fire. I came closer. There was ashes still warm. I breathed a sigh of relief. My son found a quiet field with a pond, in the middle of nowhere, and impressed his girls under the stars. I was almost proud of him until didn't notice the tracks leading to the pond. It seemed like someone was dragging something heavy towards the water itself. I walked to the edge and stared into the muddy water. Turning towards the fire pit, noticed bloodstains on the grass behind myself. I entered the water with caution, and about 13 meters from the shore, my worst fears were confirmed. I stepped on something hard, bent over to feel it. It turned out to be thick timber rafting chain. I pulled it and pulled a body wrapped in a blanket out of the water. Throwing back the fabric, I saw a swollen face. It was Rochelle. I quickly wrapped her up back and drowned it deeper. Then he ran to the car and rushed home. I sat in the car in the yard for about 15 minutes, trying to understand whether it is a panic attack or heart attack. My heart was pounding so hard that it hurt in my chest. Tears rolled down my face while I was trying to come up with at least 50 different theories, conspiracy explaining why my son is not what's the matter. Someone knocked on the glass driver's door and I almost jumped. It was James. I hesitated, got out of the car, and he immediately hugged me, saying, "Whatever it is, it's all in okay, Dad. Just say that it happened." He was such a good son. For a moment, I forgot about the pond and his body mother. I followed him into the house, changed into dry clothes, and joined him in the living room. I settled into his chair, and he sat down opposite on the sofa. For a few minutes we were silent. I dropped to the floor and said, "I found your mother." He replied, and not I know what I expected, but his reaction shocked me. There was no surprise, no anger. It was also even the impassive expression I saw on his face in rare moments when I caught him doing something forbidden. Looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Tell me you didn't do anything stupid." "Son." He looked away and said, "What do you mean by stupid?" I raised my voice a little. "Damn, take it. James, you killed your mother." He laughed and said, "This was dead long before. How I hit her on the head and dragged her into car. Any that is ready sell your son for a dose, already dead long time ago." I couldn't utter a word. I always wondered about that night. But James never talked about her. James continued, "You know, I actually lucky, witches for me paid, took me home and said so that I never returned to mother. I think it could have been much worse, but it was that day that I broke down. I realized how pointless it actually is. In fact, life is. Of course, I killed it. This deserved to die 6 times over in a row." My eyes filled with tears when my son confessed to more than 15 murders. I was sitting stunned as I listened to him tell details and describes that's it. When he finished, I just sat there. What could I say? What should I have said? Say? My son admitted that he's serial killer, and the only thought in my head was, how to do it, so that it doesn't ruin his life. Finally, I plucked up the courage and said, "We need to find you help, son. This unhealthy." James interrupted me. "None, the therapist won't help me." "Dad, you or I'm a good father, so I'll save you from unnecessary nonsense. We both know that I'll be 18 in a month. I'll leave. From under your roof. Besides, I have there are plans." I looked at my son and tried to see a monster in him, which he turned into. I was 17 years old, he is a parent. But in my worst nightmares, I could have imagined that he would turn out to be so broken. I quit my job a week ago. To his, I've already almost reached my 18th birthday, all savings, pouring alcohol into myself, trying to forget what I learned. And exactly on the day after his birthday, he disappeared. The last hope for him died. In me after a few weeks when the police found the bodies in the pond. Besides, by that moment, he was already far away. Several weeks ago, I received a postcard, and on she had a photograph of a sandy beach. On the back were the words, "Hi, Dad. I just wanted to say that I'm all set okay." I threw it on the table by the door and I went back to the bottle. Part of me wants to go to the police and tell everything. It probably wouldn't have been that easy to track him down. It's difficult, but he is still my son. I'm ready for a lot, but I'm ready to hand it over. The crimes for which he faces imprisonment, the death penalty, is beyond my control. Civil liability. With each as the weeks go by, the feeling of guilt becomes more and more harder. Now all I can do is hope that everything is really all right with him, okay? I have no idea where he is, and I don't want to know. All that remains for me is hope he stopped killing. After all, he really was a good boy. Tall, charismatic. I'm sure I could achieve a lot if only wanted. Well, write in the comments if you like it. Do you like this section of stories like these? Scary. I would also like to know from you, I prefer more realistic stories or which are clearly unrealistic. And now let's move on to the next story. Story 2, The Most Unknown Serial Killer. I served time with the most unknown to the world's serial killer. Hi everyone, I'm an ex-convict and I'm not very knowledgeable about computers, but I stumbled upon this site by accident and I enjoy reading other people's stories, so that I decided to tell my story. I served 10 years in prison from 2001 to 2011 and perhaps met the person could be considered the most unknown in the world as a serial killer. It was in 2011, when I had until the end of my term. There were about 6 months left and I won't mention his name for obvious reasons. Well, we shared a cell these last ones. He served 6 months for fraud. Years, maybe more. I don't remember. He was under 60. And to put it simply, his Onzek didn't look like him at all. Thin, with glasses and always with a book. On walks I was playing chess for a while. And I heard that I have never lost in all this time. At first I didn't really talk to him, but after telling him that soon I go out and complain that I'm stuck right so with papers, he helped me. I was grateful, and after that we became friendlier with each other. But it was the night before my release he told his story. I got it. moonshine, and we started drinking and exchanging stories. Well, that's how it is in prison, mostly show-offs and tricks. I admit, we got pretty drunk. And then he told his story. Then, like you now, I thought it was complete nonsense. We were drunk and I didn't believe a word of it. I just decided that this was the ravings of a madman. But when I came out, well, first I'll tell you his story and then what I learned after. That night, he confessed that from 1970 to 2010 killed 155 people. Said that he killed his first victim when he was 23. But I realized that I wanted to do this all the time life back at 15. Said it was a calling like the priesthood. He said that his specialty is roads, mostly highways. He waited in roadside rest areas in the dark, while no one will stop by. Fridays were his beloved, the easiest victims. Like take candy away from a child. They snored on front seat in the parking lot, trying to sleep off a dozen glasses of beer before the police catch them. And he spoke, watched them while they slept. Their heads were thrown back on the headrest, mouths open. He said that driving along the country and waiting for drunks has become too much easy, boring. Then he switched to couples. I liked student ones the most. Couples, young, sweet, their whole life in front of them. He said he was having an incredible time. It was a pleasure to take life with such potential. They went to the nearest roadside parking on the highway to make love, and he's in the dark watched them before getting started business. After that, as he said, he recorded news broadcasts where they always showed a cute young blonde with smile that smiled at him from the screen. Then they showed a vigil with candles in their hands. Those who were grateful that it wasn't them. A crying parent. A teacher who I barely knew the student, but I talked about her great potential. Potential that was not destined to come true. He laid out these reports by category and by evening included my favorites. How the film sat down with pizza and wine and watched this news, remembering the various victims over the years. Of course, I didn't believe a word of it. Who would have believed it? We were drunk and by that time all of this became disgusting. Of course, I wanted to punch him in the face, but I couldn't. In the morning they let me out and he knew it. And later I realized that this is why he did everything and told me, teased me. In general, it was the last part that told it makes me think. They killed me in the 90s. A girl named Alicia. I won't disclose her full name, but you can Google it. The article will pop up. This is the case. Everyone knew. We have a big story in country. But that night he said that he committed the murder. He asked if I wanted it. Find out where the body is buried. I told him that he is sick, but he still named the place. You should have seen the smile on his face. As if all this time he was playing with me, waiting until the night before my exit to tell me everything, to test me or something. In the morning he just had a blank looked at me as I walked out cameras. And I'll tell you, I've been all my life next to murderers and bandits. But that one, the look on his face was something special. Sometimes he still gets up in front of eyes when I close them. Those cold dark eyes. And then the next ones. For 6 months after my release, I kept thinking about what he said about that loud murder, about the place of that poor girl. I even caught myself in the middle of the night. I go online to search about the case details, checking what he said. Man, it got to the point that I started to feel very anxious about everything of this. Of course, I will never go to police. I'm old school, but I don't know. Sometimes it bothers me. I think I was lying. But I decided to speak out. In general, I enjoyed reading your stories so much that I decided to share mine. I look forward to others. It helps. My concern. Thank you for reading. And God bless you. Now let's move on to the next one, the third one. Stories. Story 3. I met a killer at a gas station. I met a serial killer on roadside gas station. This happened in the summer of 2006. When I was 20, I only got my license in January of that year. And driving opened up for me. There were so many opportunities that I often went on solo trips to visit friends in other country states. I looked younger than my age, and at that time I often was mistaken for a high school student. At some point one random July day, I was driving along on the highway alone, heading to a friend's in the South Pennsylvania for a long weekend. The parents left and the house was completely at our disposal. We were going to drink, sit in a jacuzzi and get drunk planet Earth. The film just then went out, and maybe even go for a run at night cornfields. I was delighted and enjoyed the trip. Good music, great weather for the road. Right after crossing the New Jersey border and in Pennsylvania, I settled on one of the first roadside gas stations to fill up and buy a snack for the rest paths. Later, I tried to figure out what it was. There was a place, it just couldn't. There was a gas station with a large mini-market. Opposite it was the exit back to the highway, I-78 West, and parallel to this exit there was a primer. It will still play a role. I was heading to the store when someone came to me. A man of about 38 to 42 years old approached. Stocky, quite tall. I'm 155 centimeters, in a black t-shirt and jeans, with dark brown hair and mustache with goatee. He came out of the black pickup truck parked a few meters from my car. He had some crazy, piercing a look that made me feel uneasy to myself. The energy is just strange. Usually, I don't really feel people, but there's something here. It was clearly not so. He stood too close, looked too closely, spoke strangely. All internal alarm bells went off immediately. He asked if I was from these parts. Although I had a Connecticut car and my car number, where I'm going, and do I know what can I do anything here? After all, he has plans later. But for now, he needs to kill time. Invited me to play mini golf and go to the movies. I don't answer not a single one of his questions. She refused and said she didn't know. Area. And she went to the side store. It seemed wildly strange to me that he even invited me somewhere. It was so sudden and out of place. When I was already moving away when he suddenly yelled, "You're absolutely gorgeous," so loud and so aggressive that it gives me goosebumps. Let's go. The scream was so sharp that scared the family leaving the store. She didn't turn around and went inside. A few minutes later, he followed me and started to attack me staring. So I went to the bathroom and I sat there for at least 10 minutes, texting with a friend about this creepy type. When it came out, it was in the store was no longer there, and I was in no hurry. I bought myself a drink and a snack. Sweet and sour worms and a mixture of nuts, my essential travel kit. And then I went to get gas. I was glad that the car was no longer there, and I was already thinking about pleasant rest of the way. But as soon as I drove out onto the road to the exit onto the highway, I heard the persistent sound of the horn and saw this freak. He was standing there, the dirt road itself parallel to the exit, and honked, shouted, waved, calling me drive up. He stood so that straight, looked at the gas station and was clearly waiting for me. I'll show up. I instantly panicked and I jumped out onto the highway. He followed me, and I called my friend in horror so fast that it miraculously didn't hit accident, but didn't know what else to do. He followed me for a short time and, it seems, I took a couple of exits. My friend and we agreed in advance that if I see his car, I'll go to police station in the neighboring town and not to her house, so that this psycho doesn't bother us. I found it. Luckily, I don't need it anymore. Saw it, but I drove the rest of the way on edge, constantly checking the mirrors. Everything ended well. I got there and we had a great weekend. The incident was nasty, but I didn't really think about it. I thought. But around 2014, I was talking to another friend who is fascinated by the topic of serial killers, and she is in. I said as a joke that maybe I would then met one. I told her everything, and she immediately started Googling who it was. Active in Pennsylvania during those years. First, the result is Adam Leroy Lane, and he looked almost exactly like that one, the man I met in 2006. Of course, it's possible that my memory has added the details, similarities, but the main features are 40 years old, tall, stocky, brown hair, mustache with a goatee, and also time and the place matches. In my memory, it was a little slimmer, and that was in 2006, not in 2007, when Lane was convicted of murder. But still, it's a strange coincidence which I will not forget. Well, thanks for watching this. Watch the video to the end. I'm waiting for your comments. All the stories voiced. Also see our previous videos that you'll see it here. And definitely subscribe to the channel if for some reason haven't done it yet. Good luck.